Sawadee-kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, and we're studying the words of the Buddha. We're in Volume 3, which is titled Foundation in the Teachings. We're going to be exploring chapters 101 through 110 today. The way that we do this program is I invite students who are in Zoom to be able to volunteer to read one of our chapters. And then after a student reads the chapter, I'm going to share some teachings on that. And then I'm going to open up to whatever questions you have, whether you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. You can ask questions by putting that into the comment section. I'll be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that you like. So is there anyone in Zoom who would like to volunteer to read? Okay, it looks like Pat. Go ahead, sir. Let's see here. There we go.
Discontentedness is dependently arisen. Good, Ananda. Anyone answering rightly would answer just as Sariputta has done. I have said, Ananda, that discontentedness is dependently arisen. Dependent on what? Dependent on contact. If one were to speak thus, one would be stating what has been said by me and would not misrepresent me with what is contrary to the truth. One would explain in accordance with the teachings, and no reasonable consequence of one's assertion would give ground for criticism. Therein, Ananda, in the case of those ascetics and Brahmins, advocates of Kama, who maintain that discontentedness is created by oneself, that is conditioned by contact. Also, in the case of those ascetics and Brahmins, advocates of Kama, who maintain that discontentedness is created by another, that too is conditioned by contact. Also, in the case of those ascetics and Brahmins, advocates of Kama, who maintain that discontentedness is created both by oneself and by another, that too is conditioned by contact. Also, in the case of those ascetics and Brahmins, advocates of Kama, who maintain that discontentedness has arisen randomly, being created neither by oneself nor by another, that too is conditioned by contact. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pat. So if you've been studying the teachings of the Buddha for any length of time, then you know that the underlying cause of the discontentedness is craving, desire, attachment. That it's the longing, the yearning, the wanting, the expecting, the craving for permanence that is causing discontentedness. But what triggers those cravings is contact. That's why the Buddha here is saying that discontentedness is dependently arisen, that it's dependent on having contact. Because if you have contact through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and the mind itself, this is where the mind is interacting with the world and experiencing what the mind considers to be either agreeable or disagreeable contact. That's when sensual desire is in the mind and there's longing, yearning in the mind, that craving, desire, attachment, whatever contact that one is experiencing, the mind will think of it as either agreeable or disagreeable. And now you either experience conditioned pleasant feelings or painful feelings. But when you understand that the world is impermanent and this is just contact, now you don't see it as agreeable or disagreeable. It's just contact, and it doesn't actually trigger any cravings because there's no cravings there. So it's the cravings, desires, attachments, which is the root of all discontentedness, but that's dependent on contact in order to be able to have one of those triggered and now experience discontentedness. And the Buddha is making that very clear here with what he's sharing. And where something like this becomes very helpful for you is that if you understand that it's contact that arises discontentedness based on triggering one of your cravings, well, let's just say you come home and let's say your life partner is there and they start yelling and hollering and screaming at you. And you are noticing that your discontentedness is starting to arise. There's like frustration or agitation starting to arise. And you notice that with your mindfulness. Well, of course, you've been taught right effort to be able to cut that off and let that go. Well, one of the things that you can do as part of right effort is you can eliminate contact. You can walk away, right? Because you're experiencing contact through the eyes and the ears, seeing your life partner being hysterical or whatever it is that they're saying. You're seeing it with your eyes, you're hearing it with your ears. If you're going to protect your doorways to discontentedness, your doorways being the six sense spaces, you can just eliminate contact and choose to step away. whether it means walking right back out the door, whether it means going somewhere else in your house or whatever it might be, you can step away. And now your discontentedness can more easily be cut off and let go. You can apply right effort more easily. Because when you're in the situation and you're experiencing the contact and the discontentedness is arising, sometimes it's very challenging to apply right effort and cut it off. Now, of course, once you train your mind fully, there is no arising of discontentedness. It doesn't matter what contact that you're having through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, or the mind. If your mind's well trained, there's no discontentedness whatsoever because there's no sensual desire, there's no craving. So even, excuse me, even for an enlightened being, they're still going to experience contact, but they're not going to experience any discontentedness because the root cause, which is craving, desire, attachment, has been eliminated. So this is really helpful for you in situations where you're noticing discontentedness arising and you would like to eliminate contact in order to be able to help you to give the mind kind of a breathing room to be able to apply right effort and cut that off and let it go. And ultimately working to the point where that craving no longer exists and you could just sit there and just smile and there'd be no issues whatsoever. There's no discontentedness whatsoever, even though you're seeing or hearing or smelling or tasting or having some contact to the body or any thoughts or ideas going through the mind, your mind would be unaffected by that because the mind no longer sees it as agreeable or disagreeable. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. So let's go to the next chapter, chapter 102. Is there someone who would like to read this? Okay, it looks like Leo. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. With the destruction of craving comes the destruction of unwholesome karma. Monks, develop the path and the way that leads to the destruction of craving. And what is the path and the way that leads to the destruction of craving? It is the seven factors of enlightenment. What seven? The enlightenment factor of mindfulness, the enlightenment factor of investigation, the enlightenment factor of energy, the enlightenment factor of joy, the enlightenment factor of tranquility, the enlightenment factor of concentration, and the enlightenment factor of equanimity. When this was said, the Venerable Udaya asked the perfectly enlightened one, Venerable Sir, how are the seven factors of enlightenment developed and cultivated so that they lead to the destruction of craving? Here, Udaya, a monk develops the enlightenment factor of mindfulness, which is based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings and elimination, measuring and release, which is immense, superb, measureless, without ill will. When he develops the enlightenment factor of mindfulness, which is based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, elimination, maturing and release, which is immense, superb, measureless, without ill will, craving and abandoned. With the abandoning of craving, unwholesome karma is abandoned. With the abandoning of unwholesome karma, discontentedness is abandoned. All of the seven factors of enlightenment are explained in the same way to include the enlightenment factor of investigation, energy, joy, tranquility, and concentration, with the final factor being described in the same way as in the below. Develops the enlightenment factor of equanimity, which is based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings and elimination, measuring and release, maturing and release, which is immense, superb, measureless, without ill will. When he develops the enlightenment factor of equanimity, which is based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings and elimination, maturing and release, which is immense, superb, measureless, without ill will, craving is abandoned. With the abandoning of craving, unwholesome karma is abandoned. With the abandoning of unwholesome karma, discontentedness is abandoned. Thus, Udai, with the destruction of craving comes the destruction of unwholesome karma. With the destruction of unwholesome karma comes the destruction of discontentedness. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Leo. So here we have a discourse where the Buddha is calling out the seven factors of enlightenment as a way to help you actually get to enlightenment, where the mind has eliminated craving, desire, attachment, and extinguished all unwholesome karma 100%. Now, remember from last week when we were studying, the Buddha made it very clear that it's the Eightfold Path, which is the core central teaching, that's the training that's going to guide you to enlightenment. But there's other training that plugs into this and helps you to more fully develop the mind. The Eightfold Path, the way that I think about it, is that if you had a raw piece of wood, like a log, and then you were going to make a fine statue, like a nice figurine out of it. Well, what you would probably do to get started is get out like a hatchet or an axe, and you would start chopping off big chunks of wood. That's like the Eightfold Path, where you're chucking off wrong view, wrong intention, wrong speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, and wrong concentration. You're chucking off those big pieces of wood by practicing right view through right concentration. Well, once you kind of get that worked out for a while with your hatchet or your axe, you're then going to bring in different tools to be able to fine tune this piece of wood to get it to the point where you can put the eyelashes in or the wrinkles in the skin around the eyes. You're not going to use the hatchet for that. You're going to use maybe like a razor blade or something like that. And that's where you can think of the 7 factors of enlightenment, is that it's a tool to fine tune the mind. If you've been working with the Eightfold Path and you've been chucking off big aspects of your practice and refining your mind more and more through practicing each of those factors of the Eightfold Path, now you can start bringing in the 7 factors of enlightenment to fine tune the mind even more. Sometimes people think that these are to determine whether you are enlightened or you aren't enlightened, but that's actually not the case. You're actually using these as a way to fine tune the mind. And you're fine-tuning the mind with each of these 7 factors. The first factor is mindfulness. Mindfulness is awareness of mind, but more specifically, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. That's something that you learn as part of the Eightfold Path. It's the same mindfulness here. It's just described as a factor of enlightenment because you're going to need to practice that awareness of mind. Okay? So once you have your awareness of mind, now, if you notice that the mind is sluggish or dull or complacent, that's where you bring in the enlightenment factor of investigation, energy, and joy. The enlightenment factor of investigation is to study the teachings, to actively investigate and examine the teachings. This is your keen exploration of the teachings. As you're exploring the teachings, you're going to notice that you start coming across teachings that are going to help you to get out of that complacency, that dullness, that lethargic condition, because that's the last thing that the mind is really, truly interested in when it's sluggish and dull and lethargic. It's like, I don't want to read that book. I don't want to go to class. I don't want to talk to the teacher. I don't want to go to the temple. I don't want to meditate. It's complacent, right? So you need to arise the opposite of that through applying right effort to arise this enlightenment factor of investigation. And now that's going to spring up energy in the mind as you start to explore the teachings and you start seeing that you're finally getting the information that you need in order to be able to transform your mind and your life. And then that's where the joy comes in, the unconditioned joy, the unconditioned gladness, where the mind is cheerful and bright and uplifted. And now you've brought the mind out of that sluggish condition more towards the middle. But then with that same mindfulness, where you're aware that the mind is overactive or excited, that's where you bring in tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. The tranquility is that peacefulness, that calm of mind. And then that's where the mind becomes more focused and more concentrated. Because when the mind's excited, it's like, it's not concentrated. But when you calm the mind down with the tranquility, you can now focus the mind. And then you bring in this equanimity, which is calmness and composure, evenness of temper in all situations, especially difficult situations. So this is bringing your mind now towards the middle. So whenever you see your mind is sluggish or excited, there's tools here to bring it to the middle. And now staying in the middle, more and more, if you keep the mind there, it will just always stay there. So if any point with your mindfulness, you see the mind on either side, you would like to employ these various factors in order to bring the mind to the middle and keep it there. This is where the Buddha sometimes gets the reputation of being like a doctor. There's certain symptoms, and then there's a certain antidote or a prescription. But you are your own best doctor. You don't need somebody else to tell you what you should or shouldn't be doing. If you cultivate the wisdom of understanding how to hone your mind and train your mind, you can notice when your mind's either sluggish or excited, and then invoke the various enlightenment factors that you need to hone the mind and fine tune it and bring it to the middle. The Buddha goes into details here about each one, where he talks about it's based on seclusion, meaning that you're comfortable to be alone, that these enlightenment factors give you freedom from strong feeling and elimination, and then they mature and release. What he's talking about here is that the mind needs to mature and mature and mature. It needs to be developed. It needs to be cultivated. Even though we say, when you notice the arising of discontentedness, cut it off and let it go. That's what we say. But what really is occurring is you're cutting it off and 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 cutting it off over multiple days and weeks and maybe even months and years with some of these cravings. And then eventually the mind is matured enough that it will release the craving, desire, attachment from the mind. And then that's where the Buddha says it is immense, superb, and measureless, meaning the quality of peacefulness that you're experiencing when your mind releases. And then there's no ill will there, right? Because if you've eliminated the central desire, the craving is no longer there, then the mind is not experiencing painful feelings. If you have central desire, if you have craving, that's getting triggered. The mind's not getting what it wants, and now it's going to experience ill will. But when you have this maturing and release, this peace, this joy is immense, superb, measureless, right? And now it's without ill will. There's no hatred or anger, even the slightest dislike towards others. And then he goes on talking more about this, and he says, okay, when you've done that, he says craving is abandoned, right? And with the abandoning of craving, then unwholesome Kama is abandoned, because your unwholesome Kama production is produced through craving, anger, and ignorance. These are the three poisons, or the three unwholesome roots. So when you abandon craving, you abandon the unwholesome Kama that would potentially be produced as a result of the craving. And then when you abandon the unwholesome Kama, then discontentedness is abandoned. That's what I share with people. By the time you get to enlightenment, 100% of all your Kama is wholesome Kama. You've eliminated 100% of all your unwholesome Kama. But that doesn't mean that everything's going your way. You still are going to experience impermanence as an enlightened being. And even though you've extinguished 100% of your unwholesome Kama, you're still experiencing certain things. But the thing that you won't experience is discontentedness. That's why the Buddha here is saying that all unwholesome Kama is eliminated and discontentedness is abandoned. But you're still going to experience that your child comes home with grades that you think should be better than what they have, right? It's not like everybody's doing everything your way. It's just that you understand that these things are impermanent, right? You're still going to potentially get into a car accident or something like this. These kinds of things are still going to happen, even as an enlightened being. This is the 5 unobtainables: sickness, aging, death, loss, and destruction. You're still going to experience these 5 things, even as an enlightened being. But what you won't experience is discontentedness, because all unwholesome Kama has been eliminated. So I think this is everything here that we need to talk about. Let me know if you guys have any questions on this chapter. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. Okay, I don't see any questions. So we'll go to chapter 103. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, we'll go ahead and let Vibha read since he hasn't read yet. Matt?
Thank you, Teacher David. The description of excitement. Seeing rightly, he experiences the fading away of strong feelings. With the destruction of excitement comes destruction of craving. With the destruction of craving comes destruction of excitement. With the destruction of excitement and craving, the mind is said to be well liberated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vibha. So here, the Buddha is describing these conditioned pleasant feelings, which is happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. When you eliminate your longing, yearning, this craving that is producing the excitement, those conditioned feelings, you will eliminate discontentedness. You will eliminate all discontentedness. The mind will get to enlightenment. But remember, what you're eliminating here is conditional excitement, that there has to be some condition met in order for you to be excited. That is undesirable because it's only temporary. It arises, it changes, and it fades away. So if you get excited when it's sunny outside, that means that's based on the sun, that because there's a craving, desire, attachment in the mind, now you're going to be excited. But you're setting yourself up here. You're sabotaging your mind's peacefulness, because as soon as the sun is gone and there's some other weather event, now you're not happy anymore. So what you're doing is you're eliminating conditional excitement, so that way you can get to unconditioned happiness, unconditioned joy, where there doesn't need to be any joy, there doesn't need to be any condition met in order for the joy to exist. So here he's saying, okay, with the fading away of these strong feelings, there needs to be the destruction of excitement. Because if you allow your mind to get those pleasant feelings, then the painful ones are waiting for you right around the corner. This is a real linchpin. There's no secrets to the path to enlightenment. But this word suffering that people use in order to describe the teachings of the Buddha, it doesn't clue you in to understand that you need to eliminate the conditioned pleasant feelings. It's pretty intuitive to understand that you need to eliminate the painful feelings, the anger, the sadness, the frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. You need to eliminate loneliness and boredom. That sounds pretty intuitive. Or shyness, or embarrassment, disappointment, uncomfortableness. That seems very intuitive for most people. But it's very hard for people to grapple with this idea of eliminating the conditional pleasant feelings. You need to be able to understand that it's conditional pleasant feelings. This unconditioned happiness and unconditioned joy that is waiting for you, that is permanent. But this conditional pleasant feelings, this is temporary. It's impermanent. And as long as you allow your mind to get these conditioned pleasant feelings, that is temporary, as long as you're holding on to the temporary happiness, you'll never get to the permanent happiness. So the way to destroy craving, which is the ultimate cause of not only the pleasant feelings, but the painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant, is you've got to get ahead of the curve. You've got to get ahead of these feelings and not allow your mind to get the conditioned pleasant feelings. So when you get that brand new job and you're so excited and bouncing off the wall, well, when you lose your job, you're going to have the discontent feelings of painful feelings are going to arise. You're going to be angry and frustrated and irritated and having stress and anxiety. So you need to be keeping your mind in check at all times, that you don't allow it to experience the conditional pleasant feelings, so that more and more you can get away from the conditionality of these pleasant feelings, so that you can get to the unconditioned gladness, the cheerfulness, the brightness, where the mind's radiant and uplifted. And that's why the Buddha is saying here that with the destruction of excitement and craving, the mind is said to be well liberated. He's talking about the conditioned pleasant feelings, not the unconditioned happiness and joy, which is part of the enlightened mental state and you'll be experiencing at all times. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Okay, looks like Vibhav has a question. Go ahead, sir.
I didn't have a question. My hand was raised from the...
Oh, okay, sure. So I don't see any questions anywhere else. So we'll go on to chapter 104. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, Mr. Pat, go ahead, sir.
Destruction of craving is Nibbana, enlightenment. Venerable Sir, it is said, a being. In what way, Venerable Sir, is one called a being? One is stuck, Radha, tightly stuck, in desire, longing, excitement, and craving for form. Therefore, one is called a being. One is stuck, tightly stuck, in desire, longing, excitement, and craving for feelings. Therefore, one is called a being. One is stuck, tightly stuck, in desire, longing, excitement, and craving for perceptions. Therefore, one is called a being. One is stuck, tightly stuck, in desire, longing, excitement, and craving for volitional formations, choices, and decisions. Therefore, one is called a being. One is stuck, tightly stuck, in desire, longing, excitement, craving for consciousness. Therefore, one is called a being. Suppose, Radha, some little boys or girls are playing with sandcastles. So long as they are not free of desire, longing, excitement, thirst, passion, and craving for those sandcastles, they cherish them, play with them, treasure them, and treat them possessively. When those little boys or girls lose their desire, longing, excitement, thirst, passion, and craving for those sandcastles, then they scatter them with their hands and feet, demolish them, shatter them, and put them out of play. So too, Radha, scatter form, demolish it, shatter it, put it out of play. Practice for the destruction of craving. Scatter feeling, scatter perception, scatter volitional formations, scatter consciousness, demolish it, shatter it, put it out of play. Practice for the destruction of craving. For the destruction of craving, Radha, is nirvana. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pat. So, as you're learning and growing on the path, when we introduce you and teach you the Four Noble Truths, you're learning about craving, desire, attachment, wants, expectations, the way the mind's longing, yearning, and grasping for things. That longing, yearning is inside one's own mind. It's not the object itself, but it's the way that the mind longs and yearns for it. And you start to look around at your life and you start to independently verify how your mind might be holding on to this mobile phone, holding on to it and, being very attached to it. Your mind's longing, yearning for it. And now if it breaks or you lose it or you misplace it or something like that, you might be angry or frustrated. That's because the mind's craving for it to be permanent, right? And you start seeing other things. I give you guys examples like relationships and, we talk about a car that gets scratched and different things like this. Well, these are all things that we use as you're first getting started to be able to help you see what your mind's clinging to. But then you can look at it in more detail through the 5 aggregates or the 5 criteria or the 5 elements. These 5 aggregates are 5 things that make a living being a living being. These are the 5 things that you essentially have. You have physical form, which is this body. You have certain feelings, right? You have certain perceptions, which are your views and opinions about the world. Then you have volitional formations, which are your choices and decisions. And then there's the consciousness, the mind itself, which is like your self-identity and things like this. These are all things that the mind can be clinging to. And if you cling to any of these things, you're going to experience discontentedness. So physical form, yes, this being has physical form and you could cling to it where now you're craving for it to be permanent. And now when you see a wrinkle, when you see a gray hair, when you see a pimple or a mole, you're discontent. This is part of personal existence view and the mind's craving and clinging. But also you can think about physical form as like a mobile phone or a car or some other material possession, right? That's what the mind is longing, yearning for. It gets excited when it gets this new object and now it's craving and it's tightly stuck and the mind is all bound up because of this craving and clinging. Well, you can get free of that where you can have something like a mobile phone, but you understand that it's not permanent, that your mind is using it and taking care of it, but you're not craving for it to be permanent. And that's where your mind can be liberated. But then you can also be clinging to feelings, particularly the pleasant feelings. But some people even cling to the painful feelings and the neither painful nor pleasant feelings. You might think like, oh, I'm so happy. My friend is coming to see me this weekend. Oh, this is going to be so great. And you just kind of revel in that happiness. Or sometimes people really revel in sadness. They really kind of, kind of get indulged into their sadness or their anger, their frustration, and they cling to that. Or even other things, like shyness. The mind can cling to this. So you need to see that. You need to let those things go because they're impermanent. And as long as you cling to these feelings, you're going to keep wanting to experience them over and over and over again. You need to let those go. Then the same thing with perceptions, your views and opinions about the world, whether it's political views or whether it's views about certain laws or something that was, just or unjust or fair or unfair. The mind's going to have certain perceptions about the world. And if you cling to these, you're going to fight and you're going to argue. You're going to try to convince other people of what your perceptions are. Or when you hear somebody else that has a different perception than you, a different opinion or view, when you're clinging to these kinds of things, you're going to experience discontentedness. Or if you cling to your perceptions, you could actually make unwise decisions where it leads you to making a decision based on a false truth. Because a perception is a view or opinion that may or may not even be true. Oftentimes, the way that you might think about these is as assumptions, that the mind is assuming things. And now if you cling to those things, you could be making decisions based on those perceptions, and you find out a few weeks or a few months or a few years down the road that you've been making unwise decisions, and now everything blows up on you. So you're not interested in clinging to any of your perceptions. You could also cling to your volitional formations, which are your choices and decisions. Like say you make a decision to go on a holiday to Australia 6 months from now. And now let's just say there's been some kind of financial situation where you're a month away from going to this holiday, and now your financial situation is such that you can't go on this holiday. But maybe you cling to this decision and you're unwilling to let it go. And now you actually choose to go on this holiday and go into massive amount of debt where it would maybe have been wiser for you to actually stay home. But if the mind's clinging to this choice and decision, you won't feel comfortable to let go. Same thing if you've made a certain choice about a life partner, or a certain choice about where to live, or a certain choice about where to work. If you've clinging to any of these kinds of things, you'll be unwilling to let them go. And that's very much what you need to do, is train your mind that any decision that you make, it's changeable, because all these decisions are impermanent. None of these decisions are permanent. And then there's the consciousness itself, that you could be clinging to your self-identity and the way you view yourself based on your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, or a job or occupation. If you cling to any of these kinds of things, then it's only a matter of time before something gets triggered in the mind, and now you're experiencing discontentedness. So you need to scatter this, is what the Buddha is saying. You need to train your mind to let this go, where just like the little boy and girl who's playing with the sandcastle, when they're craving and desiring and longing and have this thirst and this excitement, this passion for the sandcastle, they're protecting every little bit and piece of the sandcastle. But once they played with it enough and they realize, it was fun, but it's over now. Now they just kind of scatter it, right? And now their mind is free, and they're not worried about the waves or the wind or somebody walking and stumbling over their sandcastle. So you would like to do that with the things that your mind is holding on to and that you're clinging and craving, is you need to train your mind to let go, so that you're not holding on to that mobile phone so tight and craving permanence, but you're not on the other side too, where you could care less and you're just tossing it around and it's going to get broken, and every 3 weeks you have to buy a new phone. You would like to be in the middle, where maybe you buy a case to protect it, and maybe you make sure that it goes in a safe spot in your bag or in your pocket or something like this. And now in the middle way, you understand that it is impermanent, but you make wise choices to keep it safe, but you're not longing, yearning for it to be permanent. So this would be the middle way for something like that. And you're going to need to find that for each one of these things that the Buddha is talking about: form, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness, that you're not clinging to this stuff, holding on to it to be permanent. Because when you destroy your cravings, desires, attachments, where the mind's not holding on, that's where the mind's free. That's where it's liberated. That's where it's experiencing enlightenment. Let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. Okay, it looks like Alberto might have a question. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I have one question. So I'm in right now, my summer plans changed because of I need to take a surgery on my ankle. And so I had to make changes. And I think I did not cling on the decisions that I originally had for my travel during the summer. But the alternative that I had to do, with the surgery happening, it's not they are okay, but I still don't feel like the gladness. So is this when you apply the 7 factors of enlightenment in this case? It's like, I'm not clinging to the original plan. It's not wise to cling on that. I need to take care of my body, and I'm gonna do that. I already planned it, and but the alternative outcome of this is, as I said, it's okay, but I still feel a little bit of discontentedness on the alternative summer plans. So I like to know how to connect it with the 7 factors of enlightenment, because the examples that you gave were based on applying the 7 factors of enlightenment to the teachings, to actually learning the teachings. But can you apply the 7 factors to these like daily situations that we may encounter?
Yeah, what you would like to apply here is you have mindfulness, which is your awareness of mind, but you would like to apply right effort, where you're cutting off and letting go, which the 7 factors of enlightenment don't cover, because that's covered in the Eightfold Path. What's really interesting about the mind, and you can see it here, is that intellectually you're making the decision that, hey, I'm fine with not going on this holiday. I'm going to stay home and do this surgery. Intellectually, you're making that decision. But the mind is like this third entity. You know, there's the body, there's the mind, and then there's this person, Alberto. Alberto made the decision that, hey, we need to take care of the body here, and we need to get some surgery. And the mind's like, we need to go on vacation. We need to go to this holiday. And you're like, no, I want to go over here. I'm interested in going over here and taking care of the body. And the mind's still holding on. That's where you can see like the mind is almost like this third entity. And it's really helpful to see it that way, because Alberto, the person, needs to apply right effort to cut off and let go. Whenever the thought of the holiday comes up, you got to cut that off and let it go. You got to just keep redirecting the mind and redirecting the mind, and eventually the mind will let go. Continuing with your breathing mindfulness meditation, continuing with your generosity, this is going to help your mind to let go, and then apply right effort whenever you're seeing the thoughts of that holiday come up.
Thank you. I also noticed that I go all the way on the pendulum, like, because there are options for the summit, including the surgery, that are going to be, fine. But sometimes I just go the way, like, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to stay in Dallas doing nothing, just resting. And as opposed to, so I think I'm going all the way. It would be so. It's still struggling a little bit with finding the middle way in this case.
Yeah. So each time you see the mind, swinging like that, you would like to bring it to the middle and applying right effort to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Rachel on Facebook has a question. She says, if we are liberated from craving and attachment in the current lifetime, does that release the bad karma from this same lifetime? Or does the bad karma linger because it must still be experienced? So if you're eliminating 100% of craving, desire, attachment, you need to bring your mind up to that for an extended period of time, where you get up to the point where your mind no longer has no craving whatsoever. And then you need to live your life that way for an extended period of time, because your unwholesome karma that you generated as a result of your previous cravings, it's still got to come back and you still got to experience it. So it's not like the moment you eliminate craving, desire, attachment is the moment all your unwholesome karma is also extinguished, because you still are going to be experiencing the unwholesome karma from your previous decisions. This is old unwholesome karma. So I refer to it as unwholesome karma rather than bad karma, but I understand what you're saying, Rachel. And I think that you can understand what I'm saying here too, is that you need to be working to gradually build up your generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. That's the wholesome roots. And you're gradually decreasing your craving, anger, and ignorance. So if you get up to that point where you no longer have any craving, anger, and ignorance in your mind, now you're living your life that way. You're going to need to live your life that way for an extended period of time. And while you're doing that, you're still going to be experiencing certain unwholesome karma coming back to you. And now you are working on extinguishing that as it comes back. And that's what's going to ultimately get rid of and clear out all your unwholesome karma. Leo has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you. For me, it's difficult to find the middle with ChatGPT. I'm often looking, as you know, for someone to make decisions for me or give me exact answers. And if it's not David, for example, it's ChatGPT often. And the consequence could be probably to stop using ChatGPT altogether. But yeah, how would you would your approach be in this being's situation?
Yeah, if you notice that your mind's craving and attached to something, you're going to need to distance yourself from it. And getting rid of it 100% for a period of time, that's going to help your mind to let it go. So when you can distance yourself from it for multiple months, maybe even a year or so, that'll train your mind to fully let go. And now you'll be more and more confident to make your own decisions. But if you rely on something like ChatGPT to make decisions for you, you're not cultivating the wisdom yourself to be able to make these decisions. So you would need to distance yourself from it. And that's what I would do if I was you.
Can I maybe find a middle here? Because ChatGPT seems very useful, or these KI apps seem to be very useful, and many people using it now. And sometimes at work, for example, someone needs some ideas or something, right? And I can look at ChatGPT and he gives me some ideas. This I wouldn't be able to do this anymore. So it seems somehow also that I would have a lack of some resource would not be there anymore to help me in some situations. Is there a middle way, or would you say you need to get rid of it for some months? Completely.
Yeah, like I was saying, Leo, that you need to distance yourself from it during a training period where your mind can fully walk away from it and your mind isn't dependent on it any longer. That's what you need to be able to do to get free of it. And then once your mind is free of it over multiple months or even a year or so, that's where you would then be able to comfortably go back to it and use it in the middle way, which is use it as a tool to get ideas, but your mind is now not dependent on it because you don't have a craving and you're not clinging to it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, Rachel, you're welcome. Pleased to help you. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere else, so we'll go to the next one, which is 105. Would someone like to read this one? Okay, looks like Alberto. Go ahead, or maybe Martha.
Where this is start. Excitement is discontentedness. As a consequence of this, excitement arises. Excitement is consciousness, is clinging. With one's clinging as conditioned existence, with existence as conditioned birth, with birth as conditioned aging and death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of discontentedness.
All right. Thank you, Martha. So this is the last section of dependent origination, which we're going to be studying when we get to volume 5. What the Buddha's a real master at is showing this cause and effect relationship between if this exists, then this is going to happen. And if this happens, then this is going to happen. It's kind of like a sequence of events, or, kind of like dominoes falling. There's one thing that leads to another, that leads to another, that leads to another. And in dependent origination, he takes it all the way from ignorance and showing you how the lack of wisdom leads to discontentedness. It leads to birth and discontentedness and a whole bunch of other things. And he shows you these 12 interlinking steps of how we originate in the world and how we come to be and how our discontentedness comes to be. But here he's just showing that this excitement, this feelings, right, that a mind has, that excitement arises in consciousness, that you get so excited. Like one of the things that you can experience as you're on this path is you notice improvement to your consciousness. You notice that you're not getting angry when you used to get angry, or you're not getting frustrated when you used to get frustrated. And you notice all this stuff and you get so excited. Oh my gosh, the teachings of the Buddha are working. Wow, this is really neat. Oh my gosh, I'm more concentrated. I'm more focused. I'm doing better at work and my relationships are going better. You can get all excited. Well, that's still clinging, right? And now when things don't go well for you, your mind's going to experience the painful feelings. And the Buddha is showing you this process here, that if you get so excited about consciousness and existence, then there's going to be these causes and conditions that lead to another birth and more discontentedness. So you need to get to the point where you despise discontentedness, all forms of discontentedness, the conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. Because if you cling to any of this stuff, it's actually going to lead to a new rebirth, and it's going to lead to more discontentedness. right? In this life and in potentially future lives if you don't extinguish it 100%. So you can't even get excited about the fact that your mind is experiencing all this progress. It's kind of like when you start seeing the joy arising, when you start seeing the cheerfulness and the gladness arising, and it's unconditioned. It's kind of like, yeah, I see you. I see you there. You might have a smile on your face, and it's just like, wow, these teachings are leading exactly where the Buddha said that they would lead. Wow, this is great. But you don't allow your mind to now experience a conditioned feeling. You just kind of inwardly smile, and you know that it's working, and you're very pleased that this is the case, but you don't allow your mind to take that leap into the conditioned pleasant feelings. That's what's going to keep you out of the discontentedness and get to enlightenment in this life. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Okay, I don't see any questions. So we'll go to chapter 106. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, Vibhav, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Teacher. A stream enterer is worth more than being a wheel-turning monarch. Monks, although a wheel-turning monarch, having exercised supreme sovereign rulership over the four continents, with the breakup of the body after death, is reborn in a good destination in a heavenly world, in the company of the heavenly beings of the heavenly realm. And there in the Nandana Grove, accompanied by an entourage of heavenly nymphs, he enjoys himself supplied and endowed with the 5 cords of heavenly sensual pleasure. Still, as he does not possess 4 things, he is not freed from hell, the animal realm, in the realm of afflicted spirits, not freed from the plane of misery, the bad destinations, the netherworld. Although monks, a noble disciple, maintains himself by lumps of alms food and wears rag robes, still, as he possesses 4 things, he is freed from hell, the animal realm, and the realm of afflicted spirits, freed from the plane of misery, the bad destinations, the netherworld. What are the 4? Here, monks, the noble disciple possesses confirmed confidence in the Buddha thus. The Tathagata is an Arahant, perfectly enlightened, accomplished in true wisdom and conduct, fortunate, knower of the worlds, unsurpassed leader of persons who be tamed, teacher of heavenly beings and humans, the enlightened one, the fortunate one. He possesses the confirmed confidence in the teachings thus. The teachings are well expounded by the perfectly enlightened one, directly visible, immediate, inviting one to come and see, applicable to be personally experienced by the wise. He possesses confirmed confidence in the community thus. The community of the perfectly enlightened one's disciples is practicing the wholesome way, practicing the straight way, practicing the true way, practicing the proper way. That is, the 4 pairs of persons, the 8 types of individuals. The community of the perfectly enlightened one's disciples is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, the unsurpassed field of merit for the world. He possesses the virtues, moral conduct dear to the noble ones, unbroken, untorn, unblemished, unblushed, liberating, praised by the wise, not misunderstood, and leading to concentration. He possesses these 4 things, and monks, between the obtaining of sovereignty over the 4 continents and the obtaining of the 4 things, the obtaining of sovereignty over the 4 continents is not worth the 16th part of the obtaining of the 4 things.
All right. Thank you, Vibhav. So first, let's talk about what a wheel-turning monarch is, because the Buddha is saying that a stream enter, someone who's in the first stage of enlightenment, is worth more than someone who is a wheel-turning monarch. What a wheel-turning monarch is someone who's in a leadership role of a large population of people, and they're guiding that group of people through the teachings of the Buddha. So like, say, like a king, or nowadays, maybe a prime minister, or a president, or a queen, or, you know, any of these other societies where there's some type of person that's in a leadership role and there's a large population of people. And today we might even think about this as a boss, as an employer who's employing a large number of people. If their mind is polluted and they're making all kinds of unwise decisions, that whole population of people are going to be experiencing unwholesome results as part of the unwise decisions that the leadership is making. And it's the individual people that are part of that group that is putting that person in that leadership role. But if that leader is making decisions as a wheel-turning monarch, meaning making decisions through the natural law of karma and all the teachings that the Buddha shares, that's going to be helpful for all of these people, whether it's 10 people or 100 people, 100,000 people, or several million people. That individual is going to be very beneficial to all of those people. So a wheel-turning monarch is very helpful in the world. But the Buddha is saying that an individual who's a streamer is more helpful to the world than this wheel-turning monarch. So even though here the words are being used that a streamer is worth more, making it sound like, like this hierarchical structure, or, like a wheel-turning monarch is not worth anything, that's not necessarily the best language. The better language would be, the stream enter is more helpful to the world because this person has more wisdom than the wheel-turning monarch. They have wisdom of how to get to the first stage of enlightenment, because in that first stage of enlightenment, your discontentedness is significantly diminished. The way that an individual has gotten to this first stage of enlightenment is detailed in the retreat that I teach each January. I teach all the teachings that you need to get to the first stage of enlightenment. But there's these 4 things that a person who's in the first stage of enlightenment will have, among other things, that they will have confidence in the Buddha because they will have seen the improvement to the condition of the mind in their life. They'll have confirmed confidence in his enlightenment and that he actually indeed understood how to get to enlightenment. They will have confirmed confidence in the teachings because they would have practiced them enough in order to be able to see improvement, so they will know that the teachings are leading to improvement in their day-to-day life. They will have confirmed confidence in their community because it's not just the teacher who you're learning from, but you're learning from the community of students that you're part of a community with. But then they'll also are going to have certain virtuous moral conduct based on the Eightfold Path, which actually leads to concentration. In terms of getting to concentration and being able to focus the mind, you're going to need to improve your moral conduct. A lot of times people spend a lot of time on meditation, but the Buddha would actually teach right view first, the Four Noble Truths, and then he would teach moral conduct before he even taught meditation. Where today a lot of people are learning meditation and they're really focused on meditation, you're never going to make real significant progress with just meditation. You need to improve your moral conduct. That's what's actually going to lead to the improvement to the condition of the mind, because by practicing the moral conduct, you're cleaning up the pollution out of your mind, and it's going to lead to concentration. So a person who's in the first stage of enlightenment will have more than just these 4 things, but by having these 4 things, they're going to have more benefit to society and to a population of people. These first 3, we refer to them as the triple gem or the triple jewel. You might hear it referred to this way. So whenever you see 3 in Buddhism, whether you're bowing 3 times or you're doing certain chants, anytime you see 3, it's typically to show respect and appreciation to the Buddha, the teachings, and the community, because these are the 3 things that you need in order to actually make your way to enlightenment. You need these in order to get to the first stage of enlightenment, but you need this in order to get to enlightenment as well. And someone who's in the first stage of enlightenment, they will no longer be reborn into the lower realms of hell, the animal realm, or the realm of afflicted spirits, which are ghosts. Well, this wheel-turning monarch, while they're beneficial and helpful to society, they don't necessarily have all 4 of these things. And they can still be reborn into the lower realms. That's what the Buddha is saying here. So that's why this stream enter is more beneficial, because they're going to be able to share wisdom that helps people to actually get to the first stage of enlightenment, where a will-turning monarch is going to be helpful, but not as helpful as someone who's in the first stage of enlightenment, because their wisdom is deeper than someone who's a wheel-turning monarch. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Okay, I don't see any questions, so we'll go to the next chapter. Is there someone who would like to read chapter 107? Okay, we've got Pat and Leo, so I'll just call on Pat since you were first.
A confident practitioner. Monks, the eye is impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. The ear is impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. The nose is impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. The tongue is impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. The body is impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. The mind is impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. One who places confidence in these teachings and persistent in them thus is called a confident practitioner. One who has entered the fixed course of rightness, entered the plane of wholesome persons, transcended the plane of the worldlings. He is incapable of doing any deed by reason of which he might not be reborn in hell, in the animal realm, or in the realm of afflicted spirits. He is incapable of passing away without having realized the fruit of stream entry. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pat. Leo, if you would like to read, you can read this next one because I would like to talk about both of them at the same time. Would you like to read this one?
Sure, thank you. The teachings practitioner, one for whom these teachings are understood, thus after being pondered to a sufficient degree with wisdom, is called a teachings practitioner, one who has entered the fixed course of rightness, entered the plane of wholesome persons, transcended the plane of worldlings. He is incapable of doing any deed by reason of which he might be reborn in hell, in the animal realm, or in the realm of afflicted spirits. He is incapable of passing away without having realized the fruit of stream entry.
All right. Thank you, Leo. So these two discourses here, the Buddha is segmenting or categorizing a certain type of stream enter. Today, we just refer to an individual as the first, second, third, or fourth stage of enlightenment, or we might say stream enter, not once returner, non-returner, and arahant. Well, this stream enter, this first stage of enlightenment, the Buddha had kind of like these two different categories that he would refer to someone who's in a stream enter. He would refer to it as a confident practitioner or someone who has entered into this particular stage of enlightenment through the teachings. So here he's describing this someone who has confidence in the teachings and being able to get into that first stage of enlightenment through that. There's still the same things that you would need to do in terms of eliminating the three fetters and all these other things, but he talks about the kind of real driving force behind it is that they had confidence. And then this one, the one that Leo just read, is more related to the teachings, that they've pondered the teachings. And of course, even to get to the first stage of enlightenment, there's a certain pondering of the teachings, but this was kind of like the driving factor behind it. So let me know if you guys have questions on this. We don't really kind of use this much today because the important thing is to get to the first stage of enlightenment. And you're going to need to have confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, the community, as you just heard. And you're going to also need to ponder the teachings as well. So we don't really categorize it in these two ways. Getting to the first stage of enlightenment is getting to the first stage of enlightenment. So it looks like Viphav has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Teacher David. I was wondering how, is it saying that if you just pondered on the teaching that, but you don't practice it, that you will be able to get into stream entry, or?
No, that's not the case. This is where you need to be able to see the teachings in the totality. So when we get into volume 5, you're going to see the Buddha has multiple discourses about what it takes to be able to get to the first stage of enlightenment. It's not just one discourse like this. There's multiple pieces that are needed in order to get to the first stage of enlightenment.
So I guess what is the clear difference between the confident stream entry and teaching stream entry? Because in both cases, you have to practice it, right? So I guess what is the difference between those two?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. That's why I don't teach it, and that's why we don't really use it today. It's something that's in the Pali Canon, so that's why it's here, because I know people will have questions about it if I don't teach it, but it's not something that we really use today. And it's not really clear in the Pali Canon of how the Buddha distinguished between these two. So I'm just sharing with you guys what's in the Pali Canon. And then what we do today is we just refer to an individual in the first stage of enlightenment as being in the first stage of enlightenment or a stream enter, rather than categorizing it this way, because there's not much clarity on this.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. I don't see any questions anywhere else. So now we'll go to chapter 109. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, Vibhav, go ahead, sir.
6 cases of incapability by one accomplished in view. Monks, there are these 6 cases of incapability. What 6? One accomplished in view is incapable of depriving his mother of life. Second, incapable of depriving his father of life. Incapable of depriving an arahant of life. Incapable of shedding the Tathagata's blood with the mind of hatred. Incapable of creating a division in the community. Incapable of acknowledging another teacher. These are the 6 cases of incapability. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Vibhav. So what you're going to see when we get to volume 5 is you're going to see multiple discourses. I think there's like 6 of them that shares the 6 cases of incapability by one accomplished in view. You understand perhaps being established in right view is to be able to understand and practice the Four Noble Truths and being able to see that very clearly, that it's craving, desire, attachment that's causing the discontentedness. That's being established in right view. But then there's accomplishment in view, which is these other discourses that the Buddha shares, that someone who is accomplished in view, there's these 6 cases of incapability. And this is just one discourse of 6 cases of incapability. There's about 5 more that he has that shares with you that if you're accomplished in view, you would be incapable of doing these types of things. And this is just one. Here he says, incapable of depriving his mother or father of life. Because if you're accomplished in view, you understand by this point, you've gotten to the first stage of enlightenment. You would need to be accomplished in view in order to get to the first stage of enlightenment. In getting to the first stage of enlightenment, your discontentedness would be significantly diminished, and you will have seen all kinds of progress to the condition of your mind in your life. You're not enlightened yet, but you're well on your way. And you would know that your mother and father did something that was really wonderful, which is they gave you this life. You wouldn't have necessarily agreed with all the decisions that they made, but you at least have appreciation and gratitude for the fact that you've got this life to now be able to train your mind to be able to get to enlightenment, and you're seeing all this progress to your mind. So you would be incapable of killing your mother or father. That's what the Buddha is talking about here. And incapable of killing an arahant, an enlightened being, because you understand how important that person is to the community. So if you're in a community that has one or many enlightened beings, arahant, you would be incapable, if you're accomplished in view, to kill one of these individuals, right? Because an arahant would be very helpful to the community. The same thing about a Buddha or the Tathagata. If you were accomplished in view, you'd be incapable of shedding their blood, meaning killing a Buddha with a mind of hatred, right? This is not something that you would be capable of doing, because you would understand how important that individual is, not only to the community, but to the entire world. And you'd be incapable of creating division in the community, because you understand how important the community is for the benefit of everybody to get to enlightenment. That it's not just a teacher, but it's the community as well that's helping everybody get to enlightenment, because people are, learning from other students as well. Then there's this incapability of acknowledging another teacher, because by the time you've got accomplishment in view, you're in that first stage of enlightenment, you've seen the significant decreasing of discontentedness. You would be incapable of thinking that there's some other teacher out there that is going to be helpful for you, because you've seen so much improvement to the condition of your mind in your life that there's no way that you would walk away from this particular teacher. You would have nothing but respect and gratitude and appreciation for this individual, because you've seen this significant improvement and transformation to your mind and your life. So you'd be incapable of acknowledging someone else because you've seen that significant improvement to your mind. These first 5 that are here, killing one's mother, father, an arahant, a Buddha, or creating division in the community, you might find some literature that refers to these as the 5 heinous crimes, or there's other ways that people will refer to them, but the 5 heinous crimes is the way that people talk about these. Sometimes it's a pretty strong language, because these are pretty strong things that if somebody does this, or sometimes people call them 5 acts that bring immediate results. Because if you killed any one of these individuals or you created division in the community, it would produce immediate results in your life in terms of unwholesome karma for you and countless other people that you're now producing this unwise decision. So these are 6 cases of incapability for someone who's accomplished in view. They've already established right view, and they've made significant improvements and progress on the path. And now they get to the point where they're accomplished in view, where these things are something that someone would be incapable of doing. And then there's going to be some others that you learn about as well. So is there any questions here on this particular chapter? Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. Okay, I don't see any questions. So we'll go to today's last chapter. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Chapter 110. Okay, I think I saw Alberto and Marta. Yeah, Martha, go ahead, guys.
Final knowledge is achieved by gradual training. Monks, I do not say that final knowledge is achieved all at once. On the contrary, final knowledge is achieved by gradual training, by gradual practice, by gradual progress. And how does there come to be gradual training, gradual practice, gradual progress? Here. One who has confidence in the teacher visit him. When he visits him, he pays respect to him. When he pays respect to him, he gives ear. One who gives ear, hears the teachings. Having heard the teachings, he memorizes them. He examines the meaning of the teachings he has memorized. When he examines their meaning, he gains a reflective understanding of those teachings. When he has gained a reflective understanding of those teachings, enthusiasm springs up in him. When enthusiasm has sprung up, he applies his will. Having applied his will, he investigates. Having investigated, he strives. Purposely striving, he realizes with the ultimate truth and sees it by penetrating it with wisdom.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So this is a key chapter to keep in mind, because oftentimes you're going to hear people that think that the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated, and instantly got to enlightenment. In fact, I just got back a few months ago from a Buddhist pilgrimage tour where myself and a bunch of students went to the sites where the Buddha lived. And the site that had the most people there was the place where he is denoted as having gotten to enlightenment in Bodh Gaya, the tree. And there were countless people there thinking that if they just sat close to that tree, or they meditated close to that tree, or they did some ritual or ceremony there, that they're going to instantly get to enlightenment. And it's really unfortunate to see this, that people haven't looked at the teachings of the Buddha to be able to see for themselves that it's just not true. He didn't sit under a tree and instantly get to enlightenment. He says it very clearly here in this very first sentence. He says, monks, I do not say that final knowledge or wisdom to get to enlightenment is achieved all at once. On the contrary, final knowledge is achieved by gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So we know this to be true because everything we've ever done in life has been this way. Whether it's to read, write, and speak a certain language, it was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. If there's some job or occupation that we have, certain special skill, it was gradual practice, gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that led to that. So we know that to be true about everything we've ever done in life. So we know that that's the case with enlightenment too. We can see through our own direct experience, but there's so many people out there that are just believing. Remember, belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it because someone convinced you to believe it, or you convince yourself to believe it. They're just believing that the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated, and instantly got to enlightenment. So sometimes people are spending exorbitant amounts of time meditating or going to places like this tree and just thinking that somehow it's going to miraculously produce enlightenment. But that's not what's actually going to produce enlightenment. It's this gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And how does one come upon this gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress? Well, you need a teacher. That's another misunderstanding that people have. Some people understand that the Buddha didn't have teachers and guides, and they think that he got to enlightenment by himself, so therefore they should be able to do the same thing. But they don't understand that that's what a Buddha is. That's the very first criteria of what makes a Buddha a Buddha, is that they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. But everybody else, they're going to need teachers and guides to help them. And they're going to need to have confidence in that teacher, that they've observed that this teacher doesn't have craving, desire, attachment, or they're practicing for the realization of the elimination of craving, desire, attachment. They don't have craving, anger, and ignorance in their mind anymore. And you can see this through spending time with the person, that their mind is calm and confident and it's well collected and they're concentrated and focused and they're polite and respectful to the people around them. And now by spending time with that person, you can build confidence in them. And now you visit that person. And as you visit that person, the Buddha encourages you to pay respect. And the reason why is because anybody who's teaching the teachings that lead to enlightenment in the way that the Buddha taught is they wouldn't be expecting or wanting anything from you. They wouldn't have a fee, for example, for their services. Instead, they're just helping you out of the kindness of their heart, that they don't want or expect anything from you. So if you have somebody that's regularly in your life willing to help you and guide you on this path, and they don't want or expect anything from you, it's important to have a respectful relationship with that person. Yes, they would be respecting you, but it's also important for you to respect them as well, because now this mutual respect between the teacher and the student, it can foster a very healthy relationship. And now as you pay that person respect, you give ear. What that means is that you're eagerly listening to the teachings, that you're actively listening, that if you're just sitting back and the teachings are just kind of rolling over your head and you're not actually integrating the teachings into your day-to-day life, then it's not actually going to be able to help you to be able to get to enlightenment. So the first part is to be able to give ear, right? You're going to need to take in the teachings. After you have confidence and you have respect for this person, now you're going to need to give ear, meaning listen eagerly to the teachings. And then when you hear the teachings, you're going to need to memorize them. You're going to need to commit them to your memory. This is one of the reasons why an enlightened being has a well-refined mind, where they're focused, concentrated, have clarity and deep memory, because they've honed their mind through being able to remember the teachings, particularly the Eightfold Path. You're going to need to know that inside and out, backwards and forwards. You're going to need to commit it to your memory. And as you do that, you're going to need to then examine the meaning of these teachings that you've memorized. This is the part where you're really deeply looking at them. And then as you're deeply looking at them, you're going to need to start reflecting on them to be able to understand whether they're true or false. Because as you start to kind of get introduced to the teachings, you start to reflect through your own direct experience in life of whether or not these teachings are true or false based on your own experiences. And then you're going to start seeing that, oh my gosh, these teachings are actually true, that this is the truth that is actually I've been looking for maybe your entire life. And that's where this enthusiasm springs up in the mind, because you're finally getting the answers to the things that you've been looking to understand most of your life. And now as that enthusiasm springs up, you start being willing to apply your will to now investigate and further examine the teachings in more detail. And now as you're investigating the teachings, you start striving to make improvements in your day-to-day life, applying the effort to do so. And as you do, you start realizing this truth that these teachings are actually leading to improvement to the condition of your mind and your life by the cultivation of wisdom. When we talk about awakening to enlightenment or to be awake, it means to cultivate wisdom about the natural laws around you. And the way that you gain wisdom of those natural laws is that you have confidence in a teacher, you pay that person respect, you give them ear, you hear their teachings, you memorize the teachings, you reflect. After you've examined, you reflect on those understandings, you now have this enthusiasm that springs up. You apply your will to investigate further, and now you strive to implement these in your day-to-day life. And then you start realizing more and more the truth, because you start seeing that certain situations that you were once angry and frustrated, that you're no longer experiencing that your mind is peaceful and joyful. And you see more and more clearly the wisdom of how to train this mind and how to navigate the world peacefully. And this is what it means to be awake, is that you've cultivated wisdom about these natural laws. That's what it means to have cultivated wisdom and be awake and enlightened, is that you understand the world around you and how to navigate it peacefully. That when you're unenlightened and you lack wisdom, you'll have struggles and difficulties in your day-to-day life, and you'll meet with certain situations that you'll be really struggling with. And that's where you turn to the teachings and you turn to a teacher, because you can't read a book and get to enlightenment. It's not possible. You're going to need to learn in classes and from books. And nowadays we have videos and podcasts and things like that, audiobooks, but you're going to need to turn to a real live teacher that you have confidence in and start reflecting with that teacher and be able to get help from that teacher about how to apply the teachings in your day-to-day life. And this is where you start ultimately realizing the truth and you start getting more and more wisdom. So this is the Buddha describing that he didn't get to enlightenment all at once, that it was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Keep that in mind when you're 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years into this and your mind's still not enlightened. Remember, it took the Buddha 6 years to get to enlightenment. So it's not a 1 week thing, a 1 month thing, or a 1 year thing. It's going to take multiple years. But the beauty about this is that it's kind of like climbing a mountain, that when you climb an actual mountain in real life, you get up to the top and you enjoy the view and the fresh air, but ultimately you have to come back down. But if you climb this mountain, when you get to the top, you get to stay there permanently, that your mind is permanently in that mental state, and you get to enjoy the view and the fresh air for the rest of your life. And that's the beauty of climbing this particular mountain. So let me know what questions that you guys have on this chapter. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. So what I'll do is just end like I typically do by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha. Next week, we're going to be in the next 10 chapters. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you guys, Alberto, do you guys have a question? I see your hands up there.
Teacher, can we talk to you at the end?
Oh, sure.
Can you take what if you're available?
Sure, I can stick around.
Thank you.
So I'll just end like I always do, say thank you all. Thank you for being interested to learn and practice the teachings of the Buddha. Next week, we're going to be in the next 10 chapters, chapter 111. Actually, it's going to be more than 10 chapters. It's going to be chapter 111 to chapter 124, because this book goes all the way out to 124 chapters. So if you guys would like to read those before or after class, we're going to do all of those. We're going to finish up with volume 3 next week. And then tomorrow in our group learning program, I'm going to be in volume 1, chapter 12, which is titled Craving is the Problem. What is the solution? This is kind of a refresher for people because by the time we get to chapter 13, I'm going to teach people how to go in and surgically remove some of their cravings, desires, attachments. And then, of course, we have our Wednesday classes and all the other things. You guys can see our events calendar. You know where all that is. So thank you all for joining. Thank you for participating. Thank you for reading. And thank you for your dedication to learning and growing on the path. Perhaps we'll see you guys in the next class. Be well and take care. Sawadee khap.
Just I'd be happy. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation.
Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.